From the memory, medicine, and the journey of life, I welcome you to another episode drawn from my memoirs and reflections. I am Professor Abdulhadi Al-Khalili. Today's episode is about a recommendation to establish a tradition in postgraduate final examinations that the head of the examination committee delivers a short address offering guidance and inspiration to students and the audience alike before the examination begins.
So I want you to picture the most high-stakes, intimidating academic gauntlet you can possibly imagine.
Oh, man. I'm guessing most people would instantly think of, like, defending a PhD thesis.
Right, exactly. And conventionally, that happens in a highly controlled, very private environment.
Yeah, it's usually a closed, quiet, maybe slightly stuffy room, right?
Yeah. You're sweating in a suit, just standing before, 3 or 4 professors who are scrutinizing your life's work over their reading glasses. The whole ordeal is private. It's totally isolated.
And I mean, the pressure in that standard Western model is already immense, but it remains confined to this tiny bureaucratic space. It's treated almost like a legal deposition.
Exactly. But now I want you to completely erase that image. We're traveling back to 1990s Iraq.
How do I quite the shift?
Yeah, specifically the Baghdad University College of Medicine. You're about to defend your medical thesis, but you're not walking into a quiet boardroom. You are walking into a massive, packed auditorium.
Wow, wait, like a public event?
Yes. We're talking standing room only. There are dozens of other students, faculty members from totally different departments, and, get this, your entire family is sitting right there in the audience watching the whole thing unfold.
That is wild. I mean, that structural shift changes the entire dynamic of peer review.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it totally transforms an administrative hurdle into, like, a public spectacle, a real community event.
And to understand why that matters, we have to look at the man who championed this format, Professor Dr. Abdul Hadi Al-Khalili.
Right, he was frequently the head of the examination committee at this college, right?
He was, and opening the doors wasn't just some theatrical choice to add pressure to the candidate. It was actually a highly calculated educational investment.
Yeah, because from what I understand, he saw closed-door exams as just a tragic waste of intellectual capital.
Exactly. By opening the auditorium, he allowed all the junior students in the audience to witness the actual mechanics of scientific rigor in real time.
Right, they got to watch how a researcher defends a methodology, how they process really aggressive questioning, and basically how raw data is forged into a verified conclusion.
It's fascinating. But before the intense scientific debate kicked off in these public arenas, Al-Khalili established this really unique tradition.
Oh, the speeches.
Yeah. He would quiet the massive crowd and deliver a short, deeply philosophical address. And our mission in this deep dive today is to explore a translated stack of notes capturing 4 specific speeches he gave between 1995 and 2000.
Which is so cool because he wasn't just giving a warm-up act to ease the tension in the room. He was laying out a really comprehensive framework for the evolution of a scientific mind.
Right. We're tracking the exact transition from being a passive student who merely absorbs facts to an active seeker of truth who actually synthesizes them. And these insights, they apply to you, the listener, whether you're a lifelong learner, a professional, or just insanely curious.
Absolutely. And that evolution begins with fundamentally redefining what academic achievement actually represents, which is the core of the earliest speech in our stack.
Right, the 1995 speech.
Yeah. So in 1995, a student named Iman Al-Khatib was defending her doctorate in the medical field. And Al-Khalili opens the proceedings with a point that initially sounds, almost contradictory for a highly technical medical degree.
Wait, how so?
Well, he states that a doctorate of philosophy and science requires a baseline understanding of disciplines that seem entirely divorced from the laboratory. He explicitly lists humanities, like geography, history, and language, right alongside physics and mathematics.
But wait, if I'm defending a thesis on cellular pathology or surgical techniques, why does my grasp of geography or history matter at all?
It sounds totally unrelated, right?
What is the mechanical link between knowing ancient trade routes and being a competent medical doctor?
Well, because disease doesn't exist in a vacuum. I mean, to understand epidemiology, A researcher has to understand how populations migrate, how historical famines created genetic bottlenecks, or even how language barriers prevent public health initiatives.
Oh, wow. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, Al-Khalili is pointing out that a hyper-focused technician only sees the cell under the microscope, but a true doctor of philosophy sees the entire ecosystem that created the cell.
That is such a profound distinction.
He argues that obtaining this degree, with all its interdisciplinary demands, doesn't mean the candidate has completed their accumulation of knowledge. It just means they've achieved a baseline state of scientific maturity.
That reframes the entire concept of higher education, because I think we're conditioned to view a degree as a finish line, you know?
Right, like a certificate of total completion.
Exactly. But Al-Khalili is suggesting it's merely proof of entry. It's kind of like, and I love this analogy, earning a PhD isn't like beating a video game to 100% completion.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it's more like finally getting your driver's license. It just means you're mature enough to be allowed on the road of research without crashing.
Yes, I love that. And he cements that idea with a really stark warning to the candidate. The translation reads, a scientist remains a scientist as long as he is learning. Once he thinks he knows everything, he becomes ignorant.
Man, so the moment the inquiry stops, the expertise basically just rots.
Exactly. And to reinforce this, he quotes Ralph Waldo Emerson, who noted that knowledge is strictly twofold.
Okay, what are the two parts?
The first part is just the database of what we currently comprehend. But the second, infinitely more critical part, is knowing the sources, knowing the precise mechanics of where to locate the information that we don't possess.
You know, connecting that to daily life, this fundamentally changes how someone might process imposter syndrome in a modern professional setting.
Oh, definitely. How often do you feel imposter syndrome because you don't know every single detail of your job?
Right. When you're sitting in a strategy meeting or a clinical review and someone asks a highly technical question that you don't instantly know the answer to, the biological response is just pure panic. You feel like a total fraud.
But Al-Khalili's framing suggests that true mastery isn't possessing a mental encyclopedia of every conceivable variable.
Exactly. Mastery is just possessing the navigational tools to isolate the variable. It's the ability to admit a gap in data while having the precise methodology to go fill it.
Which is so freeing. Admitting you don't hold the entire database in your head is just step one of that scientific evolution.
But if the first rule of knowledge is admitting you don't know everything, the second rule must be about what you actually do when you finally locate the data you need.
Right. Yeah, how do you process it?
Yeah.
Which shifts us perfectly from the philosophy of acquiring knowledge in 1995 to the mechanics of utilizing it, which she addresses a year later.
Okay, bringing us to the 1996 exam for Haider Rauf al-Hamami.
Right. And here, Al-Khalili outlines a pretty rigid academic hierarchy. He notes that a Doctor of Science, a DSc, is actually frequently awarded as an honorary title.
Okay.
But a PhD demands profound effort and the generation of new innovation. He draws a hard, definitive line between someone who is an observer and someone who is a researcher or a truth seeker.
Okay, I have to push back slightly on the text's distinction here between an observer and a truth seeker.
Go for it.
Doesn't an observer and a truth seeker see the exact same raw data?
Sure.
Like if we are both looking at the exact same spreadsheet or the same historical event, what is the actual mechanical difference in how a truth seeker's brain looks at it compared to an observer?
That's the so what insight of this whole speech.
Yeah.
The distinction he makes is entirely about the active transformation of reality. An observer, or a follower in his terminology, merely watches facts occur. They just document the surface level reality.
Okay, so what does the truth seeker do?
A truth seeker doesn't just watch. They prove. They take the raw, observed phenomena and synthesize them into verified causal mechanisms. Let's use a biological example that fits the Baghdad Medical College context.
Yeah, let's hear it.
An observer looks at a patient chart and notices a pattern, like a high fever consistently follows a specific bacterial infection. The observer documents the correlation. They see the facts happen.
Like noticing it rains when it's cloudy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the truth seeker looks at that exact same chart, and instead of stopping at the correlation, they isolate the specific white blood cells. They trace the release of cytokines. They map the exact protein binding to the cellular receptor in the hypothalamus that physically forces the body's temperature to rise.
Oh, okay. So the observer records the symptom, but the researcher proves the underlying chemical pathway.
Bingo. That is the barrier between a passive follower and a PhD-level intellect. It's proving the atmospheric mechanics of why it rains, not just noticing the clouds.
So the observer categorizes the output, while the truth seeker reverse engineers the engine that created the output. That leap from correlation to causation is a massive intellectual milestone.
It really is. But, and this is crucial, a proven pathway has absolutely zero utility if it remains trapped in a laboratory notebook.
Right.
Uncovering the truth is a great milestone, but holding on to the truth without doing anything with it is entirely useless. The application of that truth determines its actual value.
Which bridges us perfectly into the central theme of the 1998 speech. I'm so eager to get into this one.
It's a great one.
So the 1998 exam for Hassan al-Rubai contains this beautiful, really memorable narrative device. Standing in front of this packed auditorium, al-Khalili tells a story about an antique auction in London.
The dusty violin story.
Yes. An auctioneer brings out this dusty, degraded violin. The strings are frayed, the wood is coated in grime, and the crowd evaluates it purely on its surface data. So, the bidding totally reflects that observation, 1 pound, 2 pounds, maybe 3 pounds.
Right, the crowd is acting entirely as observers. They're assessing the raw material state of the object without even considering its mechanical potential.
Exactly. But then an old man steps out from the back of the room. He walks up, takes the instrument, uses a handkerchief to wipe away all the grime, meticulously tightens the bow, and places it under his chin.
And then?
He plays this complex, breathtaking piece by Mendelssohn. The entire room falls dead silent. When he finishes, he hands the violin back to the auctioneer without a word. And suddenly, when the bidding resumes, the price instantly skyrockets to 100, 200, 300 pounds.
It gives me chills. And if we dissect the mechanics of that story, the physical composition of the violin did not change. The auctioneer didn't change, and the crowd didn't change.
Right, so what actually shifted?
What changed was the active investment in the object's potential. The old man applied his knowledge of how the instrument functioned. Al-Khalili uses this to demonstrate that raw, unapplied knowledge is nothing more than a dusty piece of wood.
Just sitting there on the auction block.
Yeah. True scientific maturity, true value, only emerges through deduction, publication, and rigorous investment in that knowledge. He actually links this to an Arabic proverb mentioned in the text. Give the bag to the one who knows how to make it. You have to place the tools in the hands of those who possess the operational knowledge to actually extract their utility.
It makes total sense. I mean, hoarding proven data without applying it is like buying a top-tier, incredibly expensive smartphone, but only ever using it as a paperweight.
Exactly.
The schematic inside might be flawless. It might represent a massive leap in engineering, but the applied value is zero. And al-Khalili actually brings up some religious wisdom from the 1995 speech to support this, doesn't he?
He does. He references a hadith, a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, which warns that whoever possesses knowledge but hides it will be bridled with fire on Judgment Day.
Wow, that's heavy.
It is. And regardless of a listener's religious framework, the secular translation of that idea is profound. Hoarding knowledge isn't merely inefficient, it is an active moral failure. You have a systemic duty to play the violin for the room.
But then, to keep the ego of the candidate in check after discussing such lofty duties, al-Khalili introduces a powerful quote, right?
Yeah, from Robert Yates, an early 20th century pathologist known for his work in oncology. Yates observed that when you finally drag yourself to the top of the mountain of knowledge, when you finalize the thesis or publish the groundbreaking paper, you have to realize that reaching the top of the mountain doesn't actually bring you closer to the sky.
Which kind of shatters the illusion of absolute conquest. You expend years of grueling effort climbing, expecting to, touch the atmosphere. But the altitude doesn't bring the stars any closer.
Not at all. What climbing the mountain mechanically achieves is a clearing of the horizon. Your vantage point improves. Completing a thesis isn't the end of the road, it's just a better vantage point to see the vast, sprawling landscape of fields that you still do not understand.
Well, if reaching the peak just exposes a wider horizon of things you don't know, then the whole concept of mastering an entire field becomes physically impossible.
Right. There is simply too much horizon.
And that realization triggers the crisis of the 21st century, which leads right into our final translated speech from the year 2000.
Right. The 2000 exam for Nawfal Qidra al-Hadithi. And its topic was highly specific, by the way. Muscle strain and components.
Okay, very granular.
Yeah. And al-Khalili begins by pointing out that science functions as an art form. Some brilliant researchers are terrible teachers, and vice versa. But then he pivots to a really radical claim about the emerging 21st century.
What's the claim?
He states that an outstanding intellect in this new era no longer needs to know all the secrets of their specialty.
Wait, okay, I have to question this shift. Al-Khalili says an outstanding person doesn't need to know all the secrets. But isn't the world getting more specialized?
That's the paradox.
Right. If I'm hiring a structural engineer to build a bridge or a surgeon to operate on a muscle strain, I absolutely want them to know every granular secret of their specialty. Doesn't a lack of encyclopedic knowledge make you a worse expert?
You'd think so, but you have to look at the broader context. Al-Khalili was speaking in the year 2000, right at the tipping point of the digital information age. He recognized that when human beings are subjected to absolute information overload, memorization ceases to be a competitive advantage.
Because a hard drive can hold all the secrets with zero degradation.
Exactly. The true value of the human mind now isn't storage, it's processing power. The defining trait of a 21st century expert is the capacity to innovate, develop existing ideas, or clarify the ambiguous.
So the baseline requirement shifted from holding the data to building architecture with the data.
Precisely. And because the new standard is synthesis and innovation, rather than just rote recitation, the process of defending your work is inherently going to be volatile.
Which explains how he framed the criticism during this defense.
Yes, it's a brilliant framing. He warned the student, Naufal, that the examination committee was going to strike his thesis with heavy, sharp questioning. But he instructed the student not to interpret this fierce debate as a sign of a bad thesis.
Oh, this is so good. He frames the interrogation as the ultimate compliment. Heavy criticism signifies profound depth.
Right. If a researcher presents a shallow, derivative piece of work, it literally can't sustain 2 hours of aggressive cross-examination.
You can't have a deep-sea dive in a puddle. You can only deploy submarines in an ocean. The intensity of the committee's attack is the direct proof that the student has engineered something deep enough to actually explore.
And that requires a massive rewiring of the human ego. I mean, we attach our self-worth to delivering a flawless presentation that provokes zero pushback. But Al-Khalili demands you detach your ego from the illusion of perfection and welcome combative debate as a validator of your depth.
So to our listeners, when you get tough feedback at work or when someone asks you a barrage of hard questions about a project, don't take it as a failure.
Yeah, take it as proof that your work has enough depth to be worth dissecting.
Exactly. I mean, tracing the through line of these 4 exams just reveals such a cohesive architecture for intellectual growth. We've gone from seeing knowledge as a starting line rather than a finish line in 1995.
Right, moving from passive observer to active truth seeker in 1996.
Remembering to play your dusty violin to actually show its worth in 1998.
And finally, embracing tough questions as a complement to your depth in the 21st century.
It's an incredible journey.
It really is. And I'd love to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over that builds on Yates mountain metaphor we discussed earlier.
Let's hear it.
If climbing the mountain of knowledge only serves to make the horizon clearer, perhaps the goal of learning isn't to conquer a subject. Perhaps the utility of the peak is simply to figure out which mountain you want to climb next.
Wow.
So look around your own life right now. What is a topic or a skill or a career path where you've reached a comfortable peak, but instead of looking out at the new horizon and picking the next summit, you've just stopped walking?
That is the ultimate track of the observer right there. Getting comfortable with the view instead of pushing further into the terrain.
Exactly.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, visualize that standing room-only auditorium in Baghdad one final time. The stifling heat, the weight of the faculty's gaze. But instead of an execution squad, recognize that room for what it was, an anvil designed to forge truth seekers out of passive students. It was an arena demanding that they dust off their instruments and play, so keep seeking the truth, keep dusting off your own violins, and we will see you on the next deep dive.